signed in, it's going to bring me to the Langflow homepage. Okay, so we're in the Langflow here. What we're going to do is start by creating a flow. Now, a flow is like the Langflow project. It's where we can build out our AI system, and then we can call the flow by either running it locally on our own computer or by using the API that Langflow provides. So let's go to new flow here, and you'll notice that there's a bunch of different templates. So if you just want to check this out for yourself, and maybe you don't want to follow along with this video, you can look at examples of how to do RAG, how to build a simple agent, classification, coding, content generation. They have a bunch, and they're adding more and more, and you'll probably see this page change quite a bit over the next year or so because this project really is getting a ton of growth and a ton of work on it. Anyways, I'm going to go to blank flow because I just want to show you how we run this completely from scratch. And I'm going to start by showing you how we make a very simple AI agent. Now, first thing I like to do in my flows is just give them a name. So if you look up here where it says untitled document, we can go to flow settings and we can just give this a name. So let's just call this customer support or something because this is going to be a customer support agent. Of course, we can give it a description. And for the endpoint, let's just call it customer. Now, the endpoint will simply be kind of like that slash path that we go to when we want to use this different flow. So just give it a name that's unique if you've used Langflow before. If not, you can name it anything that you want, and we'll use that much later in the video. Okay, so let's save that and go back into our editor. Now from here, I'm going to show you how we build out some different flows, and we're going to start by building some simple functionality, specifically around RAG. I'll explain what that is in a minute, and then we'll start making this agent more and more complicated, and I'll explain it step by step. Now something important to know here is that you can import and export different flows. So if you actually press on this button here, you can press on import, and you can take the JSON file that I'm going to leave linked in the description in my GitHub repo, and you can just read in the entire flow. You'll have to change a few credentials and keys, but pretty much everything will just be the exact same. And then same thing if you want to save this, you obviously can just save it online here, or you can press on export, and you can save the flow as a JSON file with or without your different API keys. So it's very useful in terms of giving the flow to other people to mess around with, and I just want to make you aware of that all of this will be available from the link in the description. There's also some other resources like some sample data that we'll insert in the database and a PDF, and you can find that again from that GitHub linked below. Anyways, let's start building something though. I don't want to bore you too much. When you use a flow, you always start with some type of input. So you can see on the left side, we've got all these different types of components. There's a lot of stuff here, and don't worry if it looks a little bit different because, again, sometimes things change. It's pretty intuitive, and anyways, when you start, you're always going to use a chat or text input. Now, we're going to use a chat input to begin, and this allows the user just to type something in the Langflow playground. Now, there's a playground here, and this allows us to actually test our flow in real time. So every time we build something new, we can go here, we can test it out, and we can get the response. So we always start with some kind of input, and then at the other side of our flow, we always have some kind of output. Okay, so if you wanted something like an Echo app, you would just connect the message to this text, and what would happen is as soon as I type something in, it would just get displayed as a chat output in our playground. So let me quickly show that to you. If I go to playground and I say, hey, and I hit enter, you'll see that it just gives us back hey, and the reason for that is my flow just took some input, passed it to the output, and then that was that. I'm just going to delete this by pressing on it and click delete, but I'm trying to show you that we start with an input, and then we end with some kind of output, and everything in between is kind of our AI system. So that's how you get some kind of results. Make sure you have an input and you have an output, and you'll see that we connect different components by just dragging these different colored bubbles to the corresponding kind of inputs and outputs. Okay. So what I want to do is start with a RAG example. So we're going to bring in an agent. We're going to go to agents here in the components. You also can search for it and just drag one of these in. Now for the agent, we have a lot of different options. Obviously, we need a model or an LLM, which is going to run the agent. We need to choose the model name. And then if we're using something like OpenAI, we need our OpenAI API key. Now, if you press on this little globe here, this is going to allow you to view variables, and you'll see that I have an OpenAPI key variable. Now, if you don't have that, you can make a new one, and you can set it equal to your key, or you can use any other provider that you want. Again, keep in mind you can run this locally on your computer too, so you can use something that's open source. Okay, anyways, if you want your OpenAI API key, you can go to this link right here, which I'll leave in the description, press on create new secret key, copy that and bring that into Langflow. I believe you do need to have a credit card now on OpenAI, but it's very cheap, maybe a few cents to use this. Otherwise, you can use one of the open source providers. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to drag our chat input as the input to our agent. So the idea is that whatever the user asks, maybe they ask some kind of question because this will be like a customer support agent, we'll pass that as the input, but then we also need to give some instructions to our agent. So I'm going to create a prompt. To make a prompt, you can grab the prompt from this kind of component on the left-hand side, and we'll just drag the prompt and connect that to agent instructions. From here, I can press on this little square, and I can write a simple prompt that I want to provide to the agent. So let me copy one in, and then I'll talk about how that works. Okay, so I just copied in a really simple prompt. You can type this out, or again, you can just find it from that flow link in the description. But it says your primary goal is to accurately answer user questions by utilizing information from the company database. Use retrieval augmented generation to fetch and present the most relevant data. And then we have a question, and this is a prompt variable. So if you want to have something dynamic that you pass into your prompt, like the user's question, for example, then you can do that. So we're going to pass the user's question. And that says, in your response, incorporate the following relevant data points, and then we have these results. Now, these results are going to be the results from our database, which contain kind of relevant information to what the user asked. I'll show you how we get those in a second, but the point is, if you want to have variables, you can embed them inside of braces. Notice it shows you right here. And now we have two variables that we can kind of pass into this prompt, which we will then pass into the model. So I'm going to pass this as the agent instructions. And I'm going to take my chat input, so the output of my chat input, and I'm going to pass that as the question to my prompt. Okay. Now, also at this point, I'm just going to change the names of a few things. So to do that, you can just double click on the name, and I'm just going to call this FAQ, just so that we know this is handling kind of the FAQ, agent components. I'm also going to take the response, and I'm going to pass that to my chat output. So at this point in time, I actually already have an AI system, but we're missing the important component, which is the RAG component. Now, for any of you that aren't aware, RAG stands for Retrieval Augmented Generation, and it simply means that we're going to go search inside of a database and find relevant information based on what the user asked, and then feed that into the prompt, and in this case, into our agent. The idea is we can get contextually relevant responses or data, and we can then allow the LLM to reason based off of that. So it gives us things related to, for example, our company or the frequently asked questions that we have. So let me show you an example of what I mean to make this a little bit more clear. I'm just going to pop this open. Let me find it here, which is my frequently asked questions document. So imagine, this is quite simple. I just have some questions and some answers. But if you're a company, you probably have a bunch of documents like this. Things related to promotions going on, different sales, policies, terms and conditions, whatever it might be, right? You probably have all of this type of data. Now, ideally, you want your AI system to be able to use this data and not just make stuff up, but actually answer based on things that, are true, right? That are in your kind of company database or, company internal information, whatever, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to upload PDFs like these. In this case, I'm just going to use one, and you can find this exact document from the GitHub linked in the description. You can upload as many as you want, and we're going to instruct the AI to retrieve information from this and then answer based on that. So ideally, when I ask it, how long does it take for me to get my shipment, it will use this content that we have inside of the document. That's really the kind of high-level overview of retrieval augmented generation, and it uses something known as vector databases, which DataStax provides. So what we're going to do now is we're going to drag in another component, which is called our vector store. Now we're going to bring in the Astra DB vector store, but you can use whatever you want, and it should automatically populate for you here the Astra DB application token. If it doesn't do that, you can go to Astra DB, which I'll show you in a second, and generate one yourself, but it should populate that for you. Okay, now this database here is a very fast vector-enabled database. What that means is that we can actually search for information based on vectors rather than traditional SQL queries, and we can pull out contextually relevant responses very, very quickly. So what we're going to do here is create a new database. We're going to create a new collection in that database, and the idea is we're going to first search in this database based on whatever the user asked. We're going to take that, pass that into our prompt, and then this FAQ agent will be able to use information that it got from the database, from our frequently asked question document, to give us some response. Okay, so in order to do this, we'll make a new database. So I'm going to go to add new database here, and I'm just going to call this something like customer. You can call this anything that you want, and for the provider, I'm going to go with Amazon Web Services and then US East 2. You can choose anything you want here, and again, this is completely free. You don't need to pay for this. We're going to press on Create Database, and this is going to take a second. Now, while it's creating the database, what we're going to do is go over to the DataStax page where we can manage all of our database instances, and we're going to create a new vector-enabled collection. You have to do this from DataStax just to make sure that we get everything enabled correctly. So where it says Langflow up here at the top, kind of beside my email, you'll press on Astra DB.
So you want to be a software engineer at Google? Go to algoexpert.io. Pick a question. Read the prompt. Write some code. Run your code. Write some more code. Run your code again. Get stuck? Check some hints. Still stuck? Watch our comprehensive explanation videos that cover the underlying algorithm at hand and that give you a line-by-line coding walkthrough of the solutions. AlgoExpert is the all-in-one platform for you to prepare for your coding interviews, ace them, and land your dream job. So, what are you waiting for? Do you want to be an Algo expert?
Now this is going to bring you to a different page, which is going to allow you to view the different database instances you have. Again, don't have to pay for this. Now you'll see that you have some kind of databases. In my case, I have an orders database, which I was using previously, and I have this customer database, which is being created. So I'm going to click into this customer database. Okay, you also see it on the side. We're going to wait for it to finish initializing, and then we're going to make a new collection, and I'll show you how to enable the vector search feature. All right, so our database has been created, and what we're going to do now is go to the Data Explorer. Now from the Data Explorer, we're going to create a new collection. So we're going to go to Create Collection here, and we are going to give this a name. Now I'm going to call this FAQ, and it's going to be a vector-enabled collection. We're going to do that to ensure that we're able to perform vector search. And for the dimensions and everything else, we're just going to leave this the same and press on Create Collection. All right, so now that the collection is active, we're going to go back to Langflow, and we're going to connect to this collection, and we're actually going to add a PDF document to it. So obviously we need data before we're able to perform the RAG operation. So for here, we're going to select our database of customer. We're going to select our collection of FAQ. For our embedding model, we're going to change this to Astra Vectorize, and I'm going to explain what this is in 1 second. For now, let's just fill in the details. We're going to change this to be NVIDIA for the embedding provider. When I ask for the model, we're going to go NV embed QA, and then there's some more information here, but you can leave all of that blank. We just need what I have here. Okay, customer, FAQ, Astra Vectorize, NVIDIA, and then the NV embed QA. Now, this vectorized thing that we just selected here is a relatively new feature that DataStax has, which allows it to automatically convert data into vectors when you add it to the database. Now, this is a pretty game-changing feature because previously you would need to generate embeddings yourself. This is essentially the type of vector data that you're going to search through. You would need to make that yourself before you add the data to the database. In this case, we just enable this setting, so Astra Vectorize, and now anytime we add something to this collection, it will automatically be kind of embedded for us. And same thing when we're searching for something, it will automatically convert that embedding for us so we can perform what's known as a vector search. It's really just a similarity search across the database. Anyways, that's what that is. I wanted to explain that. Okay. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take our chat input, so the question, right, which is going into our prompt and going into our model, and we're going to pass that we're going to pass the output of that to the search input of our Astra DB component. So the chat output is going to 3 places now, but it's also going to the search input, because if we, for example, say something like, what are the shipping times, that's the type of thing we're going to search for in our database. Okay, we're then going to take our search results and we're going to connect that to the variable results here in our prompt. But you're going to notice, and let me just move this around a little bit so it's a bit easier to view, that we're not actually able to pass these search results directly to results because the bubbles don't match in colors. So what we need to do instead is we actually need to parse the search results, which are going to be converted or come as JSON data, into textual data so we can pass it into our prompt. So to do that, we can search for the component that says parse data. You'll notice that it will take this data as an input, and then we can just take this text and we can pass that to our results. Okay, so we have some chat input, which is the search string in our database. We get some results, we parse the data, we pass it into our prompt, and then we pass that prompt to the FAQ agent. Now I noticed that we're using the chat input twice because it's going to the prompt and it's going to the input. For now, that's totally fine. Later, we're going to convert this into something called a tool, which is going to kind of remove this, added like duplicate. Anyways, we now have this system. Everything will actually work perfectly fine. But the issue is we don't have anything inside of our database. So before I run the flow, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add kind of a separate component here, which will allow us to add our PDF to the database. So to do that, we can go to this Data Components tab, and we can go to File. Now this allows us to upload a file right to Langflow. Now after File, we're going to connect this to a split text component, okay? So we're going to look up split text. We're going to take our data, and that's going to go to the data input of our split text. Now what we're going to do here is we're going to take a PDF file, or whatever file, really, it could be any type we want, and we're automatically going to split that and convert it into chunks before we add it into our database. So that's what this is doing. There's a bunch of other ones you can use as well, and you can kind of mess with the settings, but that's all this does. If we have like a massive PDF that's hundreds of pages, we can't add that as one document in the database, and we don't even want to do that. We need to chunk it into smaller pieces so then we can search through it when we do our vector search. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go to Vector Store again. We're going to bring in our Astra DB component, and we're going to enable the same things, but this time we're going to take chunks and convert that, or add that, sorry, to ingest data. So rather than searching the database, we're actually going to add information to the database, and we'll do it like this. So we're going to go to Databases, Customer, for the collection FAQ again, and for the, embedding model, we're just going to change this to Astra Vector S. Okay, same thing. We're going to do the provider, which is NVIDIA, and then we're going to select the model, which is this, and we can leave everything blank. And that's all we need to do. Now, what we can do is we can upload the file, and it should be added to the database. So let's upload the file. Again, you can find this from the GitHub linked in the description in case you're wondering, like, where is the PDF file? Or you can just upload anything that you want. It doesn't need to be this. Okay, so I'm going to upload that, and now it's uploaded here. I'm just going to press Run on the Astra DB component. When I do that, it's going to run the flow from all of the components connected to this previously. Okay, so I'm going to run this. You're going to see that it kind of gets highlighted, and then it should get added into Astra DB, and it says Astra DB was built successfully, which now means we have that PDF data there. Now we can go look at the PDF data, or we can just test this ourselves by running this flow that we built. So in order to test this, we're going to open up our playground. And because we have a chat input and a chat output, we should be able to run through this flow. So I'm going to say, hey, can you tell me about the shipping times? And let's spell shipping correctly, of course. And let's see what kind of reply we get. So there you go. We see we get domestic orders and international orders. And it's not just making this up. This is coming from that RAG component we just built. And if we want to look at kind of what happened here, we can see look into the flow and kind of what was going on. And we can actually inspect the input that we're getting. So for example, if we go to our prompt and we want to see what the prompt actually was, we can press on this kind of like eyeball here, and you'll see that it actually brought in the information from our PDF. Now in this case, it just injected all of the data because we don't really have that many things in the database. But obviously, if we had a lot more information, you would see that it would just get the relevant documents, bring that in here, and then the LLM, is able to reason based on this data. Okay, so that's a very simple example of RAG, and now we have kind of one part of our customer agent built. We're able to look in the kind of database and find information at least about frequently asked questions. But we also know how to add information to our database by using this kind of file upload that we just built. But now what I want to do is I want to go a step further, and I want to allow the agent to actually look through customer data. So things like the orders, right? So to check the status of an order, whether it's canceled or shipped, or to check different products, and we're going to build a kind of new system now, and then we're going to combine those two together by having an agent that can use these different agents. So we're kind of combining like almost like a manager, and then two agents beneath that manager, where the manager agent will decide, hey, should we use the FAQ agent or should we use the order lookup agent? And then it will go and use those tools based on what's required. So that's what I was saying with this FAQ. What we're actually going to do is we're going to convert this into a tool that an agent's going to be able to use. So I'm going to go here, this is really cool, and we're going to toggle something called tool mode. Now when I do this, what's going to happen is you'll notice the input goes away, and so does the output. The reason for that is that now this is something that we're going to pass to another agent in its tools input, and it will be able to be used by that agent. So we've just kind of created our own custom tool. Now let's put the chat output over here, and I'll show you how this works. Now first things first, whenever we make the tool, we're going to go into the controls here, and we're just going to make sure that we give the tool a name and a description so that our model knows how to use it. So if we scroll down here, we should be able to find some kind of agent description. Yes, so it says agent description. We're just going to open this up, and we're just going to really briefly describe what this agent does. Say, looks up and answers frequently asked questions like shipping, estimates, cancellation, orders, and more. Actually, maybe we don't want to put orders. I'll just say cancellations and more common business questions. Okay, and let's spell answers correctly. So we're just giving it a description so that our other agent knows when to use this agent. Okay, there's a bunch of other stuff in here you can mess with, but for now, that's all you really need. Okay, so now that this is in tool mode, we want to use this. So we're going to bring in another agent. So we're going to bring an agent right here. Okay, we're going to connect our chat input as the input to this agent, and then we're going to take this tool and we're going to connect it to this agent. Now we're just going to give this agent a name, and we're just going to call this like manager agent, so we know what it's doing. And we'll just select our OpenAI API key again. And then for the agent instructions, again, we kind of need to tell this what it should do. So I'm just going to click on agent instructions here, and I'm just going to directly copy these in. Again, you can find this from the link in the description, but it says you're a skilled customer service manager and information router. Your primary responsibility is to use the available tools to accurately address user inquiries and provide detailed, helpful responses. You can do the following, and then look up order numbers, access product information, and answer frequently asked questions. Now, these two we can't currently do, but we will be able to do them in 1 second. But this is what I'm telling kind of my main agent. Like, hey, I'm going to give you access to these tools. Use them properly to answer the question. Okay, so now we have our manager agent connected to our FAQ agent. Now, I'm just going to take the response from that, and I'm going to connect that to the chat output, and that really completes the manager agent. All we've done is added another layer here where now we're only going to use this tool that we just built if it's necessary. So this agent will determine with the agent framework, hey, based on what the user asked from our chat input, which is over here, and we can rename this to question maybe so that it's a bit more clear, should we use this tool? If we should use this tool, it's going to go and invoke it. It's going to pass the input or whatever we need to this tool. It will then get the question and then give us that response. Okay, so that is cool. Let me just move this file upload down here. It's starting to get big now. But the next thing we want to do is we want to build the ability to look up orders. So in order to look up orders, we need to have some of those. So we're going to switch back to AstraDB, and I'm just going to show you how we can insert some sample data in the database related to orders and product information. Okay, so let's go to our customer database, and let's make some new collections. So we're going to go to Data Explorer, and we're going to press on Create Collection. And this time I'm not going to enable the vector collection because I don't need that. So I'm just going to call this orders, okay? And this is going to represent customer orders. And we're going to make that collection, again, doesn't need to be vector enabled because we're just going to look this up like normal. We don't need to have like a vector search for this. Then we're going to make another collection, and this is going to be called products. And same thing, it doesn't need to be vector enabled, at least for right now. Okay, so let's create these two. And now I'm going to show you the sample data that we're going to insert here. So you can see that I have these two CSV files, and let's kind of split the screen 50-50 so we can look at this at the same time. I have this sample products.csv, and I have this sample orders.csv. Again, this will all be available from that GitHub linked in the description. Now, what we're going to do is we're just going to copy this information pretty much, or like take these CSVs and import them as data for our orders and products collection, just so that we have something so that we can see how this works. So I'm going to go to products, and I'm going to go to load data, okay? I'm just going to select the JSON file. So I'm going to select that from my customer service document, whatever folder. Again, you can download it from the link in the description. And which one is this that we're in right now? This is products. Okay, so we're going to load the products, so sample products. We should see that it kind of gives us all of the different fields. Obviously, you can change these if you want. And then I'm going to press on load data. Okay, so let's give this a second to load, and then we should see that we have that in there. And let's go to orders, and let's do the same thing. This time we're going to load our sample orders. Now, the thing that I want you to pay attention to in our orders is that we have this array of the products that were ordered. So it contains the IDs of products in our product table here. So what we're actually going to do is allow the model to look up information in both the orders and the products database and to kind of aggregate data together, which I think is really interesting. So we have this sample data, you can read through it, it's just like 5 or 10 rows, I didn't add a lot of stuff. And now I'm going to show you how we can get the model to use this. Okay, so we have it here, have it orders and products. So let's get out of this, let's go back to Langflow by changing this to say Langflow, and let's write that new tool. Okay, so similarly to before, we're going to bring in another agent. Now this agent, I'm going to zoom in on it, and let's call this the order lookup agent. Okay, now let's go into the agent. I'm going to enable tool mode on it, by the way, just like I did before, so make sure you click that. We're going to go to controls, and we're going to give this a description. So for the description, we're just going to say, you can look up order and product information. Okay, good. Sweet. So we'll close that, and now we need to give this access to some tools. So again, the way that agents work is you can give them tools, and they will then utilize those tools to go and solve some kind of task. So first, let's do the OpenAI API key here. For the agent instructions, same thing. Let's copy something in here. So let me just open this up.
It's Hostinger's biggest ever Black Friday sale. Manage hosting for WordPress plans now start from only $1.95 a month. Create, launch, and manage your WordPress website with our suite of AI tools. Plus, get a domain and extra months for free. Get 24/7 expert support and try it risk-free with our 30-day money-back guarantee. Join more than 4 million people making their dreams a reality online. Go to Hostinger.com and launch your website today.
And let's copy this in. Okay, you are an expert in analyzing customer orders and providing detailed and accurate information. Your primary role is to utilize and provide tools to efficiently look up order numbers, retrieve relevant details about the orders, and address any questions or concerns the user may have. And then it says, orders always contain an array of product IDs ordered. Use these IDs to look up specific products from the product lookup table and aggregate the product information with the order to provide a clear summary of the order. If